Welcome to Doing Different with Kimmy. My guest tonight is Michelle Morris, who is a storyteller driven by characters, providing a glimpse into motivation, inspiration, and the power of resilience and connection. She writes novels, women's fiction, and thrillers. Her books abound with strong women, a diversity of characters, multi-generational family, both blood and chosen, timely issues, and timeless topics. She's had many careers, initially in politics. First job was at the White House and as a journalist, then as a corporate communications executive with global companies, before deciding to write novels full-time. Born in rural northeastern Michigan, she has lived most of her adult life up and down the East Coast from D.C. to Connecticut, with a few years in the San Francisco Bay Area and a magical year in England at the University of Sussex. She's a graduate of Albion College with a bachelor's in English and political science, as well as a public service concentration from the President Gerald R. Institute for Public Service. Michelle's late husband was an Irish musician from Dublin, Ireland, and they have triplets who she adores, but who frustrate her as a competitive sport. She enjoys travel, reading, sailing, good conversation, cooking, exceptional breakfast tea, storytelling lyrics, impressionist paintings, and finding inspiration in the landscape, people, and world around her. Having traversed the globe, she's learned to embrace her inner nomad and considers northern Michigan and southeastern Connecticut home. Michelle's book, Comes Around, is a compelling journey of resilience, self-discovery, and the enduring power of home. Perfect for readers who enjoy women's fiction with a strong element of suspense. This novel explores the complexities of family, the weight of secrets, and the courage that it takes to reclaim one's life. On this episode, we will touch on doing different after loss, reinvention, and limitless possibilities. Enjoy the podcast. And here is part 1 of Doing Different with Michelle Morris. Welcome to the podcast, Michelle. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. So I want to ask you, what was the moment that you realized that you needed to do different, and what helped you trust that shift?
Sure. So the quick answer is a deathbed promise. My husband was diagnosed with a brain tumor, and he lived then for 8.5 years until the tumor, he had surgery. Then the tumor started growing again. Our triplets were 3 when he was diagnosed,
Oh my
and they would
gosh.
have been a few months before their 12th birthday when he died. But that last week, my we had him at home on hospice, and that last week, the man that I married came back to me for just a little while, and
Oh,
he apologized for the erratic behavior and everything that had happened over that almost a decade. But one of the things he said was, "You have to promise me. Write your books. That's what you're meant to do. It's what you've always wanted to do. I know you've had to take care of me and have the health insurance and take care of the kids, but really, you need to write your books. And if you have to write our story first, do it."
yeah.
And I made the promise to him that I would write the books. It took me a while to finally do it because my kids were still young and I did need to keep my corporate job. But finally, I decided it was time. It was, I had a series of corporate jobs and I just kept finding people who put profits over people. And
Yeah.
that doesn't jive at all with my own values. So
Yeah.
for me, for years in in corporate world and in politics before that, that was my original career. I was always writing. I wrote speeches, helped develop the voices of politicians as well as corporate executives.
Wow.
I wrote their communiques, all those types of things, and helped them define who they were. And some of them, I have to say, were excellent. They were really good.
Mhm.
They were, they believed in what they were doing. They really wanted to have a legacy that said they made a difference other than just the bottom line.
Right.
Those were the people and those were the companies that I enjoyed working in the most. But I started seeing a shift over the last 10 years or so. So I decided, I don't know if it's them or me, but it's time that I fulfill that promise. And so
Yeah.
I left corporate. Now I did consult for a couple of years, just because friends of mine asked me for help with their communications and their marketing at their corporations. But finally, in 2 years ago, I said, you know what? It's time. Enough is enough. I'm going to write books. I'm going to have uh, basically have a store of them ready to go. So I wasn't the person who wrote one book and then was, oh no, what am I going to write next? Before I did anything with them, I wanted to make sure I was going to continue. And at the same time, I learned the industry. So the simple answer was a deathbed promise. The longer answer was my whole life has been a series of pivots. And
Right.
this is the next one. This is the next act of my life. And it's very different because it's just all about me, what I'm producing. Am I producing enough? Am I learning the industry? Am I going to be a success in this? And in my mind, there's no alternative. Of course, that's going to happen.
Right. Right. And that is completely doing different. I mean, and that's a huge adventure to take on too, and studying about the industry. I think that keeps a lot of people back from writing their stories. And I know that it has with me, because it just seems like, and I know that you and I have talked a little bit about this in chat and how it just there's just so much to it. There's just so much to it. And, it's, I mean, people are choosing to self-publish through Amazon and, it's not seen as much, but it's quicker. It's a lot quicker. But, wow, what an amazing, amazing testimony. And how did that season reshape your understanding of strength, identity, and purpose?
Sure. So personally, I've always been purpose driven. And I mean, I started my life in politics. So if we go way back, when I was 7 years old, I wrote my first book.
Oh
And
my goodness.
I knew I wanted to be a writer. I knew I wanted to write books. I grew up in a small town in northeastern Michigan. 5 generations of my family have been here. And I knew that I wasn't going to stay. I knew that I wanted to go out and see the world. Well, the first place I did that was through books. And books were
Okay.
my escape. They were my education. I read everything. I read fiction, I read nonfiction, I read biographies of people to see how did they live their lives? How did they do the things that they did? I was
Right.
particularly interested in the presidential biographies at the time because I was also interested in politics. And
Right.
wanted to be in politics and I wanted to be a writer. So my first job was in the White House. And so I went the political route, but I was always writing. I wrote speeches, I wrote, reports, I wrote memos, I wrote everything that anybody needed written, I would do it in both my political jobs as well as in my corporate jobs. And then on top of that, I added strategy. So how do we see the big picture? What is it we're trying to influence? And
Right.
for me, I've taken that same purpose driven and passion driven really approach to my entire life, but switching to corporate from corporate, so going from politics to corporate was very different. And
Hmm.
I tended to work very different in the corporate world too. I wasn't the typical 8 to 5 or 9 to 5. Because in politics you just keep going until you're done. And
Wow.
I mean, it could be 72 hours. And if you have to put on a press conference in this very short period of time, you get it done. Whereas in the corporate world, there were longer lead times. But I
Wow.
tended not to do that because I was used to the political world and the adrenaline rush and all of that. Well, now in writing, even though I've chosen now to write fiction, it's still purpose driven. It's
Hmm.
still, so the things I write about, yes, I try to give people a good story. There's usually a degree of suspense in it. I wrote, and, but it's really in my stories, there's always hope. There's
Hmm.
always a story of resilience. There, if somebody falls back down, well, one of the things we're going to see is, well, how do they get back up? Because the falling matters far less than how you get back up, and that shows your character.
That's right. That's right. Amen to that. I know, what's the name of your book, if so our listeners can check it out?
Sure, it's called Comes Around.
Comes Around. And can you tell us a little bit about, it's a fiction, right?
Yes. So
Okay.
it's not the first book that I wrote when I decided to do this full time, but it's the first one that I decided that would take it down the publishing path. So
Okay.
because I thought it said something to a broader audience of people. So the book is about Hallie McCarthy, who's this young, 30 something woman, has been super successful. She worked on the East Coast, then she took a job in San Francisco at a startup. She's, reaching the pinnacle of her career. Everything implodes. Suddenly, the startup is under federal investigation. Money's disappeared. Investors want to, they want to know what's happened. Two of the three founders or three partners have disappeared, and
Wow.
Allie loses her job. And suddenly, her perfect world that she constructed away from her small town Michigan background is no more. And a month before that, she had been engaged to the CFO of the company. She broke it off with him, realizing that he wasn't right for her and their values were different. Well, he's one of the
Right.
people that's missing. And
Okay.
Allie's trying to figure out, what do I do? I don't have a job here anymore. He left and took her bank account with him. So it opens with Hallie back in her small town, and it's actually in the cemetery. And she's laying, looking up at the sky, talking to her grandmother and
Oh
her mother's mother. And we find out throughout this that Hallie's mother had been murdered when she was 3 years old.
my
And
gosh.
her father remarried and had six more kids. So she has half siblings and a step,
Mhm.
but she hasn't been home in a long time. I mean, she graduated from high school at 16, went to college, went right into her career, was on, coastal living. And suddenly, where did she go? What should she do? She got in her car, not knowing what to do, and it just pointed her toward home. And
Oh my gosh.
we find out that Hallie's family, and it's multi-generational, so her grandparents are there, her on her dad's side, her father's there, and her siblings, who obviously are younger, and they she has to decide who she's going to trust. But we quickly find out that her father's the president of the motorcycle club, and she grew up in the motorcycle club dynasty because her grandfather had started it with his buddies after World War II, and his father had been a prohibition rum runner. And so, so it kind of that's how they got into it. And then her father took the club totally legitimate businesses. They own a lot of small businesses in the town. They care about their community. And when Hallie comes home, it's, they bring her back into the fold, whether, she's trying not to, but she has to learn who to trust. And sometimes the people you left behind, and sometimes your family, both blood and chosen, are the ones that are going to catch you when you fall.
Right, exactly. Wow, what an adventure. Thus, the cover to the book. I was, I read a little bit about it and I read the bio and I thought, oh, what is this? Because I was thinking, bikers, biker gang, and all like, something like that. So that's very interesting. Wow.
Well,
That's got
they're very
so much.
protective alpha males. But the story is around Hallie and what happens with her. And what we find out is some trouble followed her across the country when she came home. and you don't know what's
Okay.
going on or who's after her. So there's the whole suspense thriller aspect to it as well
Right.
as this, as this woman who's learning to be her own. So the corporate world wasn't really working for her anyway. And she's realizing what's important to her and having control and having, what is success? Is success really more money and a bigger house in a big city? What is success really? Those are the types of questions that are talked about in the book. So some people will just read it and say, oh, this is a story. It's a page turner. And in my reviews, that's what some people have said. Oh, I had to keep reading. I read all
Yeah.
night. Um, Other people have glommed on to those messages that I have about resilience, family, who do you trust, getting back up, what's the meaning of success. All of those things are woven into it.
Wow, that is amazing. It makes me want to learn more I'm going to get the book.
Good.
So, yes, absolutely. And anybody else out there too. We're going to get to that part towards the end of our interview about how you can get a hold of Michelle, where you can get her book and all of that. And I'll be going through those questions. Let's talk about um some other themes. I know that you've got some other books written, correct? So what are some, I know that your themes are that emotional connection. And so give us one other example of another book that you're working on that it as suspenseful? You also write thrillers, I believe, too. So give us an example of a thriller, one of
Okay.
the thriller books.
So many people, when they read this first book, oh, we want to know more about the characters. When are you going to write the sequel? And I'm like, okay, I didn't write this as a series. But then I went back and I read it myself and I thought, huh, this could be a series. I could actually turn this into a thriller series using some of the same characters. So that's what I've done. My next book that's coming out in a few weeks is it's going to be called A Quiet Town, but it's set in the same town. Hallie's one of the characters, but there are other characters that get a little more airplay in this. One of her friends, but the thriller, and I wrote it as a thriller this time, not accidentally, which the first one was. But it's about a small town, northern Michigan. It's called Timber River, and a fictional town. But it's the county has made some budget cuts and things, and a deputy is by himself transporting a high value prisoner from another county, and they disappear en route.
Oh my gosh.
And so as it turns out, the owner of the spa and the hair salon, it's his husband that disappears, and he's part of a book club. He has this book club with these women, Hallie's friends, and
Mhm.
a couple, and they're a professor who's 72. And so there's a wide range from early 20s to 72 in this book club of a few people. Well, the book club, because they read mysteries and true crime thrillers, they decide they can investigate because they don't think that the local law enforcement are doing enough.
Hmm.
They want to know, what happened to Brian, what happened to the deputy, and did somebody come and break this guy out of jail basically did his own people take him? Did was he mixed up with a cartel? Did the cartel get him before he could testify, trying to get leniency? What happened? So all these things that they have to go through. So the book club chooses to investigate, and they're called the gumshoe readers. They choose to investigate, and at the same time, some of the people that are in this club with him are with people that are in the Phantom Raiders motorcycle club. And so the motorcycle club has this security business, the same business that took care of Hallie and the CEO in California, and they were protecting them. Um, this They decide to investigate because okay, they're a girlfriend is investigating, a wife is investigating, their friends are investigating. We better do something about this. And so
Right.
we have a book club and a motorcycle club that come together to help their community, help find their friend's husband, and they unravel something, this quiet, small town, picturesque place, in the middle of the woods and the water in northern Michigan. There are things that are happening that people don't know about, and
Oh, wow.
it's sinister. And they want to get that out of their county. But in the meantime, they have to find the deputy and the prisoner. And at the same time, you'll get some modern issues, things.
Hmm.
So it touches on human trafficking. It touches on drugs. It touches on um, it touches on people in our society who are the most vulnerable. And
Right. It's relevant.
yes, you need to stand up for them. So again, it's about character, but it creates this emotional connection with the characters, and you care about, at least I'm hoping the readers will care. My beta readers do so far, but care about what's going to happen and how does the community come together, and how do they resolve this issue, and how do you find the deputy when all you have are these woods and rivers and lakes and small towns all around you and plenty of places to hide? Where do you even start? And so
Wow.
it's that was interesting for me to write, because that was specifically as a thriller. But in the meantime, I've also written, and I'm working on the third book in that series. So
Wow.
right now. But again, it'll be the book club and the motorcycle club coming together. But the two of the other ones I work on would be considered, I think, um, women's fiction, though I consider them just general fiction. But one is about an adult daughter with an alcoholic father, and she lives in
Mm.
Washington, D.C., and she's a crisis manager, and she travels all over the world handling crises for politicians as well as corporations. But she keeps remembering things from her childhood that trigger, memories with her father, and her father's calling her late at night, and she's living her life, and she's finding that maybe all the things that she thought and the reasons that she thought things happened and how she turned out as an adult were really influenced by this relationship, and maybe everything wasn't as it seemed, or
Mm.
as it seemed, and there's more to know. And can anybody ever really be defined, or should they be defined only by their worst vice? So that's
Right.
that. And then there's another one I have that's called One Cathedral Avenue, and that's set in Washington, D.C., and it's a dual timeline with with present day and 1987. It's about these women and coming of age, early in their careers, in their 20s, in the 80s. But then this one woman, where is she now? And when she comes back from her diplomatic job on home leave, and she sees across the pub, she sees this profile of somebody she hasn't seen since the late 80s. And then we get embroiled in what happened to one of her roommates and Russian spies. And there's a little bit of everything in there. So part of it is kind of this coming into yourself as a woman and things that you faced in the 80s,
Mhm.
90s, and even now. But also, it gives people a little bit of a thriller. It isn't totally written as a thriller. So that's why I would say it's more just women's fiction.
Yeah, or a little bit suspenseful too.
There's suspense in it, yes.
So did you finish book number three in the series, or are you still writing the third?
So the book in the series, I'm writing the third right now. Three others beyond that already planned out, ready to go. So it'll
Are
be,
they going to be part of the series as well? This number four book that you're talking about, is that part of the series?
yeah. So I have two things going on. I have the standalone books like this number one Cathedral Avenue, or Knowing Joe,
Okay.
about the alcoholic father, or this other one about an island, freshwater island with the women and the family who come together one summer. Those are standalone books. Now, the other thing that I have going on is I'm writing this thriller series. And so
Okay.
it comes around as kind of the foundational book that it starts with, which was originally written as a standalone, but is really, number one in the series. And then I have, I think it's six altogether books so far, and it may carry on beyond that. Hang on.
You are so talented. This sounds like it could be a movie. Like the series books, it's like it you need to get those published like as soon as possible.
That's what I'm in a thriller group and with other authors, and that's what they were saying. They're like, get them out there.
Yes, because once they read your first book, now they're gonna want to know, like, oh my gosh, what's gonna happen next? What do you hope that your readers feel when they step into your worlds that you're writing about? What do you hope that they're feeling on the inside?
Well, first thing I'm hoping is that it takes them out of themselves and their daily lives for a while, because I think we all need a place of respite and or respite. For me it's always been books and movies too, but books in particular. And you can just let everything else, your own worries, fade away for a while. And yes, there are things that happen in the books, and some of it might be, oh no, is that happening to that character? But one thing I will tell you, all my books, even the ones that might have a little bit of a sadder theme, like the alcoholic one, always end with hope at the end. And
Right,
I mean, it's not they aren't saccharine sweet by any means, but there are a lot of real world issues that happen in the books. So that's the first thing. I hope we give people a place that they can go and get out of the world in their own minds for a while and get into somebody else's, head and somebody else's trouble. Um,
right.
but really, it's that emotional connection, because I think we all need connections. And
Yeah.
I hope I try to make my characters real enough. And frankly, a lot of my characters are based on people that I've met over the years, both in my personal life and in my
Oh,
professional life. My professional life, especially the corporate world, I traveled all over the world for a long time. Which was interesting with a sick husband at home and raising triplets, but I did
yeah.
to do. And
Hmm.
so I was caregiver as well. So basically, I completely ignored myself for well over a decade.
Hmm.
And now part of that is getting myself back. So
Right.
that's part of this, doing different for me, is for the first time in very, very, very long time, I'm focusing on what I want to do to go forward. And part of that is I want to give my kids a great example. I have two daughters and a son, and they're great. But, I know that they're always worried, oh, we have to have the job, like a lot of the new generation is in the workforce. Well, what am I going to do? Well, what if I don't like this? Maybe I should try this instead. And I said, whoa, whoa, whoa. You can do so many things in your life. Don't be afraid to pivot. Do it for a while. You'll enjoy it. You don't enjoy it anymore, or you get bored, move on to something else and learn something else. Even if it means moving into a completely new field, even if it means going back to school, because this life, this is what we've got. And
Hmm.
we can't put things off. And that's one thing that's good with my kids and having their dad die so young, if there's anything good about that, it's that they understand, I think, that life is too short. And so
Yeah.
you shouldn't equivocate. You shouldn't say, "Oh, I'll put it off till tomorrow," because who knows? We aren't guaranteed tomorrow. We're guaranteed right now.
That's right. How old are your kids now?
They're 28 now.
Oh my goodness. Wow. I have a 31-year-old and a 26-year-old, and I can't believe how fast the time has gone.
Oh yeah, very
It
much.
it just I don't know. I mean, I feel like, yesterday they were like 10 and 15 years old. It's just so strange. I think the older that we get, the more time feels that it's going faster, doesn't it?
Much faster. That's what I found. And one of the examples and I use this with my kids, they'll roll their eyes and say, because I'll say Teddy Roosevelt, the man was president. He died at 60 years old.
Oh no.
He had, I counted it up one time. I forgot if it's 7, 10, 12 different careers. I mean, he was a cowboy. He was a soldier. He was governor of New York. He had a bureaucratic position for a while. He was president. He was police commissioner. He did all of these different things. And he had no trouble moving on to the next. And usually one thing leads you to the next, even if it's a huge pivot and or a leap of faith like I took, just like, okay, let's see, can I forgo a paycheck for for the considerable future,
Right.
or to get my, being an author in order to get that in order and turn it into a business. And
Right.
use that with my kids is if he can do all of those things, and he was a sickly child and young adult, so he had all of that, but yet he accomplished so much.
Yeah, yeah.
National parks if it weren't for that man. And
Right.
so, I
He
mean,
was even in the movie at the night at the museum.
oh, yes.
He made it into acting.
Oh,
But 60, oh my gosh, I'm 60. And I can't imagine. I mean, what did he pass away of again?
I can't remember. Was it his heart? Did he have a
Because
heart?
he was a sickly. I keep thinking that it was polio, but that was the other president.
Yeah, that was Franklin Roosevelt.
Right, right. So I'll have to look that up. But yeah, it is amazing. And I've told my kids the same thing. Of course, back in back in the day when they were getting ready to go to college, I especially emphasized that my daughter work really hard to get well, both of them I did. My son is disabled. He's got disorders, and he so it's a little bit harder for him with immunocompromised health. But with both of them, I wanted them to have careers. And now I'm looking at both of them, and neither one of them like their careers that much. I mean, my daughter's is changing hers in a couple of weeks, and my son is looking for something better in within his career. But you're right, you've got to be able to pivot. You've got to be able to try things out, and you shouldn't be stuck. You just because you have a degree doesn't mean that you're stuck.
No.
I mean, yes, it helps you to find that good paying job, but if you don't love what you're doing, it's very important that you change. And with you, I love how you're reinventing yourself, because that's what my podcast is about doing different, finding your voice, finding yourself, reinventing yourself. And after being a caregiver like you were, you do lose yourself. You don't know who you are anymore. And I can relate to that because I've always been my son's caregiver. He's perfectly fine, like he works and all that, but as a child with a heart disorder and a blood disorder and a bone disorder and hearing impairment, it was hard for him. I had to be a huge advocate. And then with my mom, who is 94, um, also being her advocate and being her caregiver as needed. And so you tend to lose yourself. And even women generally that are married and have kids lose themselves. You don't even have to be a caregiver for a medical caregiver, but you lose yourself. And I'm thinking that women over 50 are now beginning to find themselves and who they are. And they're more emotionally mature, and they're more focused on what they actually want. And I think it's a beautiful thing. And that's the whole purpose for this podcast is I want women to tell their stories and how they're doing different, what led them to do that. And your story is unbelievable. I mean, what a life filled with adventure, really. I mean, you from Washington, D.C., then to San Francisco, right? And then
Well,
back to Michigan.
yeah, but I was on the East Coast for a long time. So I worked in New York, I worked in Connecticut, worked in New Jersey, and I was basically back and forth to DC every other job. And then I was in
Hmm.
Connecticut for 7.5 years, then San Francisco, and back to New York. Now I'm in Michigan.
So how many presidents did you get to meet during this time of yours working
Well,
there?
it's the first president that I met. I was in college, and because I was part of the Gerald Ford Institute for Public
Right,
Service at Albion
right,
College, Michigan, and it's a public service concentration in addition to my majors. And and this is maybe heartening for some people who are like, oh, you have to have a major that leads to your career. Well, you know what? I was an English and political science major, and liberal arts was for me was the way to go because I was interested in literature, history, politics, art, all of those subjects, philosophy, sociology. But so it never led me wrong because I still picked up skills along the way. And when you're a liberal arts major, you learn how to think critically. You are
right,
well read. You know what's worked or hasn't worked in the past. You recognize patterns in history. And other
right.
things, like for me, going into corporate communications after I got out of politics, you can learn like, okay, how do I write a press release? How do I pitch an idea to a reporter? How do I handle a crisis? Because I did crisis communications as well as the executive and leadership communications.
Right.
I would land in India and where somebody was trying to basically burn down a manufacturing plant my company was trying to put out. And I got put right in the middle of it to find out
Wow.
who was doing it, what was happening, why was it happening, could we fix it? Was there a fix? Did we need to move? So I did things like that for a number of years as well. And
Wow.
so
And
it's
that can be dangerous too. I mean, if you're going into territory that has, I mean, India doesn't, but I mean, any other travel that can be really critical for a journalist, be very dangerous. And so the president then that you actually met, Gerald Ford.
Gerald Ford. And then I also, so Gerald Ford, Ronald Reagan, um, uh, George Bush, the first George Bush.
Right.
So met the second George Bush, the president. I met Bill Clinton once, but I actually worked for Reagan and for Bush Sr.
How exciting is that? I mean, not everybody gets to say that they've met all those presidents and worked with that many actually. So, wow, what an amazing life. What has surprised you the most though? Like about your the creative life compared to the corporate one? What was the biggest surprise?
Um, well, I did a lot of research, so it wasn't there weren't huge surprises, but I think going into on the creative side and the publishing industry, since I had worked in business for so long, I understood business, but I didn't know that. So I knew I'd worked in several different verticals. I worked chemical manufacturing, I worked pharmaceutical, I worked insurance, I worked banking, I worked healthcare, energy. So I worked in a lot of different industries but never publishing. And that's one of the things I think that's been most surprising to me is how ill-defined this industry is really, and in a lot of ways behind the times. So,
Mhm.
yes, Amazon is kind of taken over the world and
Yeah.
definitely took over the publishing industry, drove a lot of brick and mortar stores out of business. Do I
Mhm.
like that? No. Do they
They're
burn?
doing prescriptions now.
Oh, they do a lot of things.
They're doing prescriptions.
But they started out as a bookseller, online.
Yes.
Now, the one good
Yes.
thing about that is it sort of democratized the books, where similar to libraries, if people were in places that had libraries, they had access to books if they would go in. Um, but people can sit in their homes and order their books, or at night
Yeah.
they can. So me writing this series, I didn't plan to do this. I'm doing this because readers have told me that's what they want. And then I started looking at the research and it's like, huh, people just like now people like to binge watch TV shows. Uh,
Yeah, yeah.
they
It's
binge.
what I'm doing right now.
Well, people also like to binge read books that they like. So
Yes.
series. So while I still am writing my standalones, a couple of those standalones might turn into their own series because of the
Yeah.
characters that I have in them.
I
And
can see that. I can see that happening. Yeah, and so my next question is what kinds of messages or responses have you received from readers or audiences that remind you that your work really matters? Have there been any messages? Have there been any comments from people who have read your work, read your book?
so, yeah, I've had some readers. So some are in the reviews, and some are people who I've met or who have sent me, private messages through Facebook, um,
Mm-hmm.
who have said that the characters they were relatable and reminded them of either people they knew or a situation that they had been in. And the fact that I showed how this person, it wasn't just, oh, automatic, bad to good. It was, having to get through it. So it's a really,
Progression.
yeah. And so they've seen themselves or people they know in the characters. And
Okay.
the fact that I talk a lot about resilience and a lot about you get back up. There
Mm-hmm.
are a number of older women in my books, as well as older men too, but older women who dispense a lot of wisdom.
Mm. Yeah.
Allie's grandmother dispenses wisdom all the time. And I mean, you talk about wanting to affect change with women over 50, and it's why you started
Yeah.
the podcast. And
Mm-hmm.
it's very important because I think at 50 is when women really find their voice. I think 30 is when women start discovering who they really are and are going
Mm-hmm.
to sort of settle into themselves. But then at 50, I think that's when most women realize that, huh, maybe those people aren't looking at me and talking about me. Maybe they don't really know what I'm going through. And I think a lot of women are surprised by that. And I try to tell my kids this too, as well as my friends. It's like, why are you worried what so and so's going to say? They have
Right.
their own issues, they have their own stuff going on at home. Well, how do you know that? Well, I know that because I've talked to them. But other than that, they don't know what you're going through and they don't care. If you want to go sit at a restaurant alone and have a drink or have dinner by yourself, nobody cares. Don't crowd. You might meet somebody. You might have a good conversation with somebody next to you.
Right.
So leaps of faith aren't always doing what I did and risking entire incomes in order, to start something new. Sometimes a leap of faith is believing in yourself enough to take the trip, book the airline ticket, to go and have a meal by yourself and
Right.
comfortable doing it and forcing yourself out to go do it. And
Right. And in my case, it was plant a garden. Do
yeah,
it. Just do it. Do the garden. Paint. I discovered something during the COVID lockdowns that I could paint, and I didn't know where it was coming from other than God Himself because I just started to do it, and it just happened. Learn to play guitar. Reinvent yourself. I went and I was 54, I think it was. I went to college. I had never been to college. I never graduated high school. I got my GED in the 11th grade. So I never wrote an essay. I never gave a speech. I never learned algebra. I just felt like I was nothing really. I thought, well, I'm just good enough to get married and have children. And that's about it. I come from a small town in Maine, and, there wasn't a lot of resources or money or anything like that. And so at 54, I'm like, you know what? Both my kids do. I can do this. I can do this and focus on it online at the college, the local college. And I still have a few more. I have another semester to go, to another 2 semesters to go, but I have a 4.0 grade, a grade point average. And I learned how to write essays in Comp 1 and Comp 2, and I fell in love with writing. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can do this. I can actually write. And I gave a speech. Of course, during COVID, it was, online through Zoom, but I was still scared, but I can do this. And being in ethics and psychology, and this whole new world opened up to me. So I kind of did it like you're saying, at 50, over from 50 and on, you're finding your voice, you're discovering who you are. And for me, it just all happened all at once. The guitar, the painting, the college, the gardening. Then it was herbal remedies and growing my own herbs. Now I'm an herbalist and I'm making my own tinctures and infusions. And the podcast was the last thing that I endeavored that I had always wanted to do to help other people. So I think I know you're right, because it is when you get to that age, you become more confident and you become more sure of yourself, in regards to feeling more comfortable in your skin, and you take those chances, and you're not as apprehensive, and it doesn't matter, what everybody else thinks. When you're young, you're like worried about, oh, what's everybody going to think of me if I do that. I could go to before COVID, I was going to the movies by myself if I wanted to.
Yep.
I like being alone. I enjoy my own company. And I think that's something else that women over 50 start to realize, that they're okay with that. They're okay. And so, yeah, so we get more comfortable, I think, as we age, and we start to find who we really are. And looking back, um, before 50, I never would have ever imagined. I don't know if you can relate to this when you were in the corporate world, but never could have imagined of where I'm at today. Do you feel that way? Like, did you ever like picture yourself being an author? I mean, I know you wrote your first book at 7, and that's your desire. That's, you have a gift for it. But did you ever actually think that you were gonna get there?
I did.
You did. Okay.
In fact, the plan was to do it much earlier, but then, in fact, my husband was from Ireland and he was a musician, Irish musician. I met him in Dublin, and he never respected my corporate work, but he respected my creative work. And he kept saying, "Oh, I don't like the corporate you. I like," and it's like, it's all me, really.
Right.
This life is affording you this life and your health insurance. But but the thing is, before he got sick, we had talked about moving to Europe and me just working on writing books and, maybe working for a PR firm. But really, the idea was we would be in Europe and I would start doing what I really wanted to do. And then he
Hmm.
got sick. About 6 months later, he was diagnosed, and so everything changed. And then with all the personality changes and trips to the emergency room and every 3 months MRIs for 9 years. It was
Wow.
8.5 years. Yeah. So, things changed. It got delayed. But yes, I absolutely saw this is what I was going to do. It was just a matter of, did I try to figure out how to do it while I was still in the corporate world, which people say, oh, well, if you really wanted to do it, you could do it. Well, not really, because I worked anywhere from 60 to 120 hours a week. And when
Yeah.
you attach to a CEO or a president of a business, and you're traveling with them and you're writing for them, you're basically available 24/7. Now, I know some people put boundaries, but remember, I came from the political world. There were no boundaries. It's you do what you have to do to meet your goals,
Right.
to win the campaign, to, whatever it is. I took that same work ethic into corporate world, and part of me wishes I hadn't done that. and hadn't made myself available all the time, because I think there is something to say with people valuing scarcity.
Yeah,
So, but that's not me. I mean, what you see is what you get. If I know that the whole idea of telling truth to power, as people say now, it's just telling the truth. And that's what I've always done. I never equivocated. If somebody really I'd say, do you really want the honest opinion, unvarnished with that? And I'd have leaders say, well, of course I do. Well, some of them didn't appreciate it, but
right.
the really good ones really did. And they're like, okay, tell me why you think that speech sucked. Why do you think I did so badly in that interview? What should I do differently going forward? How should I handle that? And
Right.
so those are the people that I respected. But so for me, it just, and I used those same thought processes, writing in the corporate world. So I was doing that, all day long, writing and advising, to come home and then have to write more as well. And that would be after my kids went to bed,
Right.
if my husband
Right.
wasn't having a bad night.
Right.
So it wasn't possible for me. I'm kind of an all or nothing person, and
Yeah.
needed to throw myself into the all or nothing of being an author.
It's
And
amazing how you didn't give up during those, was it 9 years that he suffered like this with the brain tumor?
it was 8.5 years from the time little more than that, from the time he was diagnosed till he died. But we noticed for 2 years before that, we noticed symptoms and the personality changes and things happening. Three different doctors in three different states, because we moved a lot with my corporate jobs. And
Right.
so three different doctors for 2 years told me and him that it was my fault that he was like this, because I left him at home with three babies and with three toddlers. And I said, wait a minute, women have been doing this for millennia.
Right.
What is the problem here? He chose to stay home. He's a
Right.
musician. He wanted to stay home with his children. Oh, well, you have a man. It's kind of like male midlife crisis, Michelle. I'm like, just do an MRI. There's
Right.
in his brain. He's totally changed. And they're like, nah, it's just that you guys had triplets and you aren't living where either of your families are. It's just you. Well, then he started having this, he'd stop talking in the middle of a sentence. And then 30 seconds or a minute and a half later, he'd start talking again as if there was no break. Well, he was having mini seizures.
Oh
And
my.
we didn't know that's what it was. And, and he would all of a sudden his finger would jump or his leg would jut out on the stairs and he'd fall. And so that's when the tumor was growing. And
Was he aware of that this was happening
yeah,
because of the tumor?
well, he didn't know that's what it was because it hadn't been diagnosed yet. But
Oh,
it took those mini seizures, and it took the fact that he was having uncontrollable movements, especially on one side of his body, that they took us seriously finally and sent him for, where they put all the wires on your brain, and the EEG was abnormal. So they sent him for an MRI. They couldn't get him in for, I don't know if it was 4 weeks or 6 weeks. And so they got him in the day after the 4th of July. I always remember that. My sister's
wow.
birthday. And they said they would call us the next week with the results. Well, they called the next day and said, you need to be here first thing tomorrow morning. And that's
Wow.
what started our journey. But it took, over 2 years. So he was really sick from the time my kids
Mhm.
were old, or even a little before, until he was diagnosed when they were three.
But it's still amazing that you never gave up on your dreams because having that 9 years of caregiving and lots of issues going on with his health and everything, you could have, some people would just give up and they would say, well, I'm never going to be able to do what I want to do. And I'm so discouraged now. And but you kept going. You kept going. So, how do you hope that your journey gives other people permission to take their own leap of faith and to not give up and to just keep pursuing that dream. No matter what kind of obstacles come in their way, or I hate to say that it was an obstacle with your husband's sickness. I don't mean it to be that way, but what I'm saying is no matter what life throws at you, what would you hope that your journey gives those others permission to take that leap of faith and to keep on going and to not give up?
Sure. So, first of all, I think that all of us are only limited by our own attitude and our own imagination.
Yeah.
Imagination was definitely there. I mean, even in the corporate world, the way I wrote was not like any other corporate writers. I told stories before they talked about storytelling. I mean, that's, you had to engage people. You had to connect with them emotionally before you can get people to believe in where you want to take a company to or a country before you can get them to buy a product. I mean, it's all of those things are important, creating that emotional connection. And
Yes.
so I also think that that's true about ourselves, though. We can give excuses. We can, I could say, oh, you know, poor me, I never got to do what I wanted to do. My husband was sick and he just turned into this person I didn't know and, basically stole all our money, which happened. Um,
Oh,
and retirement accounts and everything gone. And he had no idea what he did with it and took out credit cards in my name. And I didn't know he did that. So my credit's been completely destroyed. All of these things happened. And could I have said, oh, woe is me? Well, I guess I'm just going to sit here and wait to die. I mean,
right.
sometimes you just feel that way. But at the same time, it's like, oh, heck no. That's not me. And
Right.
I have never done anything the easy way in my entire life. I never meant to do it any other way. But I mean, I guess somebody should have had a clue when I discovered my favorite poem when I was 6 years old, and it was Robert Frost. Two roads diverge in the woods, and
Hmm.
I took the one less traveled by, and that's made all the difference. Yes, that was me. It's like I've always gone the least trodden path. Well, it seemed much more interesting to me to do things that way.
Right.
That
Right.
attitude carried over, and even though I was exhausted, and even though my stress levels, or that, as the doctor said, my cortisol level was so high, my body was completely in survival mode. It's like, how
Wow.
to get rid of the weight? I still haven't, but it's like the stress and prolonged stress. And at one point he's like, okay, we need to figure out how to get your stress levels down. I'm sending you to someone to teach you how to meditate. Okay. I think I am the only person on the face of the earth who has ever failed meditation. I can't do it. I could never quiet my mind, but there were things I did learn. She taught me to breathe and how important breathing is, and I never really thought about that. She also had me imagine. She took me on a guided journey. She all and this woman, as well as teaching meditation, was also either an RN or a nurse practitioner. I can't remember now, but she's like, okay, I'm going to tell you where we're going and walking, and since you have such an imagination, you just imagine it and we'll get there, and you're going to find your spirit guide, and you're going to, whatever. But she also had me find my safe place. And so when things would get really stressful, it's like, go to your safe place. Well, my safe place was my favorite place, which was on a sailboat. Well, wouldn't you know it? All of a sudden, it's a beautiful day, and I'm out sailing, and this wave comes over the bow and over me, and it's suddenly stormy seas. She had to bring me out of that journey. And she's like, no, 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 whoa, whoa, whoa. Your safe place, we're moving to land. No more. And so she's like, a tree. You're going to sit at a tree. It can be near a lake, near the water. You can hear the nice lapping waves, but no hurricanes, all. So I had to learn all of these things, but for me, it was all new. Um, and I've never been able to quiet my mind. I finally learned how to do that and live in the moment when I became an author, and I had to slow down for
Right.
a while. And suddenly
Right.
have all the money to do whatever I wanted and just, jet off to Europe to see friends or go to Italy for vacation anymore. I didn't have that. So, I'm having to be careful. I'm having to, live like a starving artist. And,
Right. And
and
I can relate too to that stress and the not being able to sit quietly and to meditate. I have a really hard time relaxing.
yeah.
It's almost as if the stress is um such a habit because it's been with me since my childhood, um, that it's who I am. I hate to say that, but I feel like it's the stress that keeps me going.
Well,
And if I haven't been on many vacations in my life, but when I have, I don't know how to enjoy it. I mean, I'm enjoying it, but in my mind, I'm like, okay, what do we have to do? Where do we have to go? Oh, we should do this. Oh, we should do that. And it's the expectation of how you want it to be just perfect. And you want to get fit as much in as you can. And so I have a really hard time, and I've had a hard time reading books and novels, and I do, but it takes me forever because I can't just sit quietly and focus because I'll be in the middle of reading something and my mind wanders on, oh my gosh, what do I have to make for dinner tonight? Or, oh, did I water my plants? And it's like it never ever stops. And even when I'm doing my devotions, like in the morning, I walk away from it and I'm like, oh my God, I'm sorry, God. Okay, let me come back to it. And then I start reading some more, and then something else happens. And it's a nonstop merry-go-round, that I need to be able to learn how to relax. So when I got into my herbs and I got into all of these tinctures and infusions and stuff, I found that there's a lot of herbs out there. You have to be careful, but there are a lot of herbs that will um, that will help you to calm down. It's a lot better than Western medication, in my opinion, because been there, done that, have had that Ativan, have had those things before in the past. And all it did to me, it calmed me down. But the next day, then depression came.
oh,
So there's always a side effect with whatever you take. So I found that helps, but I still have a hard time focusing. And I think it's even worse now than it was before 50. I think raising the kids and doing all that kept me focused on that. Now that I have all this time, it's like, oh, what can I do? And my friends will say to me, oh, you're so busy, Kim. I don't know. I can't even keep up with you. I don't just watching you posting and just, you got the podcast, you got the infusions, you got your art group, all this. How do you do it? And it's like, what else? It wouldn't be me if I didn't do it. It's what keeps me going, you
yeah.
know?
And that's what's important. I mean, that's when you think about, for me, what do I say to other women? And yeah, the attitude helps. I mean, I live with an attitude of gratefulness.
Yes.
And I'm telling you, it's what you feed is what grows. So if you
Yes.
feed fear, you're going to be a fearful person. And if you think about fear all the time, if you are a miserable person and everybody has it better than you and woe is me, well, you're feeding that inside yourself and it becomes almost like muscle memory. So for me, I decided when I was trying to figure out how to quiet my mind, um, I was just going to start naming things I was grateful for every morning and before I go to bed at night. That's what I do. It's like, even if I can only find one thing during the day, it's like, you know what? Starbucks treated me so well today. The baristas, they are fantastic. And they just kept my tea coming because I don't drink. They know how I like my tea and it's always perfect. But that's something I'm grateful for. And I've got this community around me that now are, I mean, they're like cheerleaders, and these people, these young baristas, as well as ones who, are older, they'll come. Are you writing today? What are you doing? Is it okay? How's it going? When are you going to be done with the next book? And so, but I'm grateful for these people. I'm grateful for
Yeah.
the community.
Yeah.
I'm grateful for a place that I can get out of the house and go sit and write, and they don't kick me out.
Right. And you can focus, that's okay with you. I mean, you're able to focus even though there's a lot of people coming in and out and people
Oh,
all around.
better than if I were at home because I have
Right.
all these other things to do, or there's my bed and I can go to sleep, or, well, I don't take naps, but I could. And because my time's my own now, that's the other thing. My time is my own, and I have to
Right.
set deadlines, and I'm actually pretty good about it. If I say I want to have a book done by a certain time, I am going to get that book done by the first draft done by that time. And so
Right.
I'm pretty good about that. But so a lot of it's attitude. And a lot of
Yeah.
it is what you feed inside yourself. So for me, I'm finding the things to be grateful for. And I'm also picturing ahead. It's like even silly things like, okay, I'm meeting a friend for lunch today. I'm going to picture that there's going to be a parking space in the part of town I want to park in.
Right.
Guess what? That parking space is always open for me.
That's funny. Yeah. I think of I've been thinking about, I have a friend that has a gratitude journal, digital journal that she posts every day on my Doing Different with Kimmy group. And she's such an inspiration because it doesn't matter what it is, any little thing, even when it's storming outside or a bird flies past the window or whatever it is. And even through her health and her husband's health journey, no matter what it is, she finds something to be grateful for and write about it. She writes about it. She makes beautiful cards with watercolors and just that gives me inspiration and makes me feel like, what am I doing grumbling about the weather over here or the whatever, whatever it could be anything. I need to find something to be thankful for. And so I've been thinking about maybe starting a gratitude journal and writing, seeing that I love to write. Maybe that I should, do something like that too. So I think it's really important that we do find um, the sunshine in the darkest places. Really, you need to look at, you know, your surroundings and to appreciate because man, there are so many horrible places that we could be besides where we are right now. And thank God that we're not. And but also I wanted to ask you, like, what would you say to somebody who feels stuck between the life that they have and the life that they long for? So what would you say to somebody like that? Because I know that I had felt like that. And I know a lot of people that feel like that. And that's another reason why I have this podcast is to encourage people to just do it, do whatever it is that makes them happy and do it. Um, how do people get unstuck? Like um, between what they're living now and because you did it. You did it. You were living in 9 years of caregiving and the life then as compared to the life that you longed for, which is now, and you're doing it. So, what would you say to somebody who feels stuck?
You're not, first of all. Because remember, attitude, you're not stuck. You are
Mm-hmm.
impasse. You, you know, for me, so me, I take big leaps of faith. I pivot, I full pivot. I don't just do a little bit like, oh, let's try this. No, I go full on. I left politics and went to corporate that I knew nothing about. I left that and decided to become an author when really didn't know anything about the publishing industry. I mean, so I take big leaps and I take big risks, but I'm also the woman who jumped out of an airplane on the last day of parachuting season before the ground was frozen when I hit. So, adrenaline rushes for me. And having been in politics, there were a lot of adrenaline rushes. But
Yeah.
it's, but what I would say to other people who may not want to take those massive leaps and just jump into the unknown, because you also have to remember that I have the mind of a strategist. I see the big picture. I want to know where I want to be. I'm really bad. If somebody just says, "Here, go do this task," I'm terrible at that. Most people, I'd say 95% of people, great, give me a task, I'll go do it. I will do it to the best of my ability. Just tell me what to do. No, don't tell me what to do. That's see, I'm going to do the opposite probably. But not only that, I have to see the big picture. So for me, I came up with my author plan. I came up with, here's what I want to be. Here are my objectives. Here are the type of books I want to write. Here's the type of audience that I want to go for. I didn't even know if that was a thing. And then I started saying, well, what are some of the steps that can help me get there? And part of it,
Right.
how do I meet best-selling authors? How do I meet, even if they aren't best-selling, how do I meet authors that are making a living at it? And
Hmm.
I started asking questions. I talked to people and I found out, oh, this person knows that person who knows this person. Oh, she's a best-selling author. Oh, this person, here's a writing group. Go and see what it's like working with them, if any of them ever published. Um, what have they found? It's and I started meeting people, and now I know tons of authors. And it's interesting because even now, after some of them who, well, have been doing it, some of them for 10 years, some of them for 30 years, they still have a lot of the same questions I do now, which is why I get back to this industry is not well defined enough. At least
Right.
I like the big picture, and then I like saying, here's what we do, and this will make you a success. Uh,
Right.
that's the way it works. But so I would say to people, one step. So what's the
Yeah.
thing you want to do? Do you want to become a painter? Do you want to get your degree? Do you want to take a trip to Greece and, meet a new love interest? Do you, what is it that what's your heart's desire? Maybe that you've never told anybody else. You talk about a gratitude journal, write it down. What is
Right.
your dream? And then you look at that every day and it becomes part of your mindset, because a lot of this is really about mindset. So attitude,
Yeah.
mindset, and you take one step. So maybe you don't go full bore to Greece, but you go have dinner by yourself at this new restaurant in town. Maybe you go sit in the local coffee shop or Starbucks and just see who comes in and start up a conversation with someone. I can't tell you how many people start up conversations with me when I'm sitting there writing. It's
Right.
great. And it's great fodder too, because I hear their stories. But
Right.
but it's take that one step and then write down, what are some of the steps to get there? What do you think you'd need to do? Do you know other people who either have done what you want to do or become what you want to be, if it's, say, it's a job thing? You start talking to people, you do informational interviews, just have them tell you how they got there. And I guarantee you,
Exactly.
everybody gets there the same way. And,
Exactly.
but one step at a time. You don't have to do the leaps like I do. You can take one step at a time and you're going to get there. If that's what
Exactly.
you want, you're going to get there. And will you have setbacks? Oh, absolutely. And I mean, I've had setbacks. I've, worried about things. I've worried about what did I do to take myself out of a world where I got a paycheck.
Right. Right.
So those types of things, we all have doubts, but you don't let them crowd in and take over. You have to see the big picture and keep your eye on the prize. I mean, that's a real thing.
Right.
It's, what is it that you really want out of your life? And I don't care if you're 30, 40, 50, 60, 90. You're still breathing. You put a mirror up in front of your face and it fogs up. You still have a breath. You have a chance to do whatever it is you want to do.
That's right.
We
That's
may
right.
end up, as we get older, we may have some physical limitations. I really don't think I'm going to be jumping out of any more airplanes in my life. I'm telling you, it's the biggest adrenaline rush around.
I think I would faint.
It was,
And I'd miss the whole thing coming down. I'd faint.
no, it was fabulous. It was the most terrifying thing I've ever done, death defying, but it was a storm coming in behind us, rolling in,
Oh,
and you had to,
oh,
you could see the lightning in the distance. It's like
oh no, no,
scary.
no.
But at the same time, I lived on that high for the next, I don't know, 30, 45 days where
Wow.
nothing, I mean, I defied death, so nothing was going to stop me. And
Right.
the thing
I
is,
think it's got a lot to do with um community too, is there's so many women that are secluded and they don't feel good about themselves and they don't think they have any talents. And because for so long they were living their lives for their kids, for their husbands, for their parents, whatever. And so they're kind of secluded. And in my situation, the best thing was to find community. And it doesn't have to be out and about. It can be virtual. But find something that you can follow, that you admire, that you see other people doing the same thing. They're all getting together and trying to reinvent themselves. There's so many groups out there on Facebook and Instagram, well, especially Facebook, but of people, women over 50, reinventing themselves and finding, their way in life. And get involved in a community, get involved in, um, research, watching what other people do, duplicating, what other people are doing that works for them. Find, if you don't have an interest, find one, explore, um, because that's where I think that you're going to get your inspiration and where you're going to get your encouragement is by seeing that other women have done it. Look at everything that you have done. And, when somebody's watching this interview right now and I know in my heart, my viewers are going to be very encouraged by this because a lot of them, well, not a lot of them, but a few of them want to be writers. And I have a few that are writers. So I think that it's encouraging to just go out and um explore. And my motto is just do it. Just do it. If you always wanted to be a writer, get a get a pen and get a notebook and start writing, or do it on your laptop, whatever. Just at least start. I started, I'm in my second chapter of my book right now. Don't know if it'll ever do anything, don't know if it'll ever go anywhere, but I started. And so that's the best thing that you can do is just start. If you're interested in, um, you know, baking. I know a lot of women who love to cook. I am not one of those women. I do cook. I absolutely do cook, but I don't enjoy cooking. But I do it. And but maybe start a group of recipe sharing. Everybody joining in and sharing their recipes from their families, and then maybe doing a Zoom where everybody tries one recipe that week. Whatever it is that you're interested in, it can be done, but it's like you said earlier, it's your attitude, and you need to get into that mindset where you know that this is you don't want to stay stagnant, so you need to do something. Best thing to do is to just do it. Just get
well,
out there and do it.
I agree. And I also think so we also have degrees of people, right, who don't just do it or who have been kept down for so long, um,
Hmm.
didn't and haven't found themselves again, or maybe they never knew
Right,
themselves in the first place, or
right.
the life they thought they had, suddenly they aren't married and they, are left have the kids, or maybe the kids are now gone, an empty nest. But I think so yes, community is important. I also think there are the extremes though too, where some people do the work, get get the therapy, get
Yes.
I mean, that wasn't the route I went. It didn't hold for me. It was more community and just do it, the attitude. But a lot of people, I mean, that helps because
Yeah.
it can help you find things about yourself. It can help you get over past trauma, whether that's having been put down. A lot of women have
Yeah.
been put down for years or told that they aren't good enough or aren't exciting enough or don't look good enough. Well, you know what? That's ridiculous because
Yeah.
men look good, feel good at all ages, all sizes, all I mean, that is something that society has put on people and especially women to basically keep people down. And
Yeah.
so if therapy is what you need, do it. But the other thing people can do, and I never really thought much about these before until I've met some people who are doing it, and now I get it. Life coaches, people who can help
Yes.
you break through. And there are people who combine the two, the therapy and the life coach, so they can get
Hmm.
whatever the trauma was, whatever that stumbling block that won't let them move forward, um, and let them accept themselves. But then also somebody to help them, show them what is that first step or second step. And it's okay to take one step at a time. You don't have to
Yes.
fall and jump. You can take steps like that. But I do think
And
it's important that people know that it's all right to get that help if that's what they need.
yes, and I totally agree. And I'm glad that you brought that up because I found a community called Grace Restored, and I'm the ambassador there. And she's a life coach, counselor, and it's for empty nesters, estrangement with your children. It's learning to be emotionally mature, and how to parent with emotional maturity. And it even involves, like, if your kids are addicted to drugs or um, all kinds of, different scenarios that could happen with your adult children. And so I found for me, that was a huge encouragement to work through being the parent of adult children, because that was another issue as women our age. I know for me, um, because I put my whole life into raising my kids, that was my career. So my career was raising my children. So when they leave, you're like, a balloon that just deflated. You're like, what do I do with my life now? I am no longer needed. I am no longer important. I am no longer the glue that's keeping it all together. And that's false. That is false. And so, this community that I got plugged into, after a year of watching the posts online and thinking, wow, this is what I need. And then I just did it. I just joined and became the ambassador of it because I believed in it. And I believe that as women, sometimes we need to gain, emotional maturity, because women are emotional. And sometimes, I know for me, I'll speak for myself, is I was very emotionally immature. And that comes from history, that comes from childhood. And so learning that in these last couple of years has been therapy. That is therapy. There's resources, there's workbooks, there's videos, there's live Zoom meetings. It's phenomenal. And I've also found that art, painting can be therapy. I mean, there are art coaches
Yeah.
that are therapeutic art teachers
Yes.
that teach you how to paint, um, to calm down, or to, it's almost like reading. It's like, for you, it takes you, like you were saying earlier, when you're reading a book, it can just take you into another world. With sometimes that's with painting. You're just painting. I know for me, when I start my painting, 5 hours later, I'm like, where did the time go? I'm enjoying this so much. But at the same time, because I tend to be a perfectionist, I'm also going back and repainting and repainting and fixing, and that's what's making, making the clock tick. So I just think that there's so many things that a person can do. The reading is good for therapy because look at all the different books that you can read too on self-improvement and stuff like that. So, but my next question now is what are your goals in the next few years?
Write more book. I mean, that's
Yeah.
books and sell a lot of books.
Right.
And I'd like to do so. So for me, influence has always been important. So making a difference. And
Yes.
I mean, that's why I wanted to go into politics in the first place. I wanted to make a difference. I wanted to have an impact on people through policy, through inspiration, inspirational leaders I've always looked up to, um, and people who do the right thing, even if nobody's looking, that's important. But so for me, even though I'm writing fiction now, I still want to make a difference. I want people to see themselves in those books. I want them to see that, yeah, these are fictional characters, but I'm telling you, almost every one of my characters has something that I brought in from somebody I've met on my journey.
Right.
And
Right.
so these are real people. And it's very important to me that people see that you can pivot, you can make it, you can, especially as women. Um, I mean, I am a little different because I've always had a lot of self-confidence, just do naturally. But I also think it's because I grew up in a world where nobody said anything to me until, well, in school, you're a girl. So I can still play football and baseball better than you. This is me as a little kid. I can
Yeah.
do up, you know. Russell, I'll be, but I grew up with uncles and grandparents. I grew up with very strong grandmothers and great grandmothers who all had careers at a time when women didn't have careers. I
Wow.
one of my grandmothers, my mom's mother, she worked at the bank. She basically ran the bank. They wouldn't let her be the director because, or she, because she was a woman, and they told her that.
Yeah.
She graduated at 16. She was valedictorian. She went to business college at 16 and came back and it was she should have been running things. Uh,
Yeah.
my other grandmother, my dad's mom, she was a small business owner and she was always upset that she couldn't finish school and then couldn't go to college, couldn't do all these things, but she made the best of her life. And growing up in the depression, her father was a farmer, and it was a dirt farmer, as we say, but she started her own business. And people always thought it was my grandfather was the one that made all the money and had this great life for them. No, that was my grandmother. She's the one. It was her money that took care of them through rough times, through economic hardship, economic downturns. She was doing great, and the family was.
Yeah.
But I
So
had.
it's not just influence with you, it's your blood.
Oh,
It's your family. It's in you. It's in your genetics.
I remember I was two or three, and I wanted to be a baseball player. And, only men play baseball. I wanted to be a baseball player. And so I had this little baseball in this glove, and I was playing with my uncles, my mom was the oldest child, and both my parents were. And so my uncles were like halfway between my parents and me. So it was like brothers almost. And
Right.
older brothers. Well, they were throwing it. Well, sometimes the ball would hit me in the head. I'm what, 2, 3 years old? I remember, and my cousin was sitting on a step and she said, "Tell them they can't do that. You're a girl. They have to treat you differently." And so I said, "I'm a girl. You can't hit me in the head with a base." And they came and tackled me. And
Oh,
I'm laying on the ground looking at these boys' faces, teenage boys' faces above me. And they're like, "Don't ever say that. You aren't just a girl. You can do anything a boy can do. You might have to work a little harder at it at some point, but you can do anything. You are the only person who's going to limit you. I didn't know what that meant at the time.
That is so sweet that they
I
said that to you.
I remember those words. I remember their intense faces looking at me,
Wow.
and they held me to that for years, and I believed it. And I'm telling you, I don't even think I realized when I look back. I actually, when I had kids, I came back from my leave, they with triplets, they didn't want to send me to India because, oh, well, you have three kids at home. I'm like, well, my husband's at home. This guy
Right.
you're sending, he's got three kids at home too and a new baby. Well, yeah, but his wife's there. I said, my husband is there.
Right.
Dangerous. Well, it's dangerous for him too. And, but I also, when I first had the kids and I came back, and the head of the business I was working with at the time, um, he came up to me and he took me to lunch one day and he said, I have to apologize to you. I really wanted to know if you were dedicated to having babies or business. And I was appalled. And I looked at him and I said,
Oh
what?
my
And he said, no,
gosh.
he goes, but you haven't missed a beat. And I said, well, of course I haven't. And I set it up so you wouldn't miss a beat when I had to be out on maternity leave. And
Right.
which they didn't. And he said, I just, this doesn't usually happen, Michelle. Usually, we expected you to come back and say, oh, I'm going to quit working. I said, really? I have a musician husband at home. You really think I'm going to quit working when we're buying diapers and formula
Right.
and I remember I looked at him and I said, let me give you, you're my friend, I thought. Let me give you a clue here. Never say anything like this to a woman again.
Yeah.
But when I looked back, there were several instances like that where now I didn't face it so much in politics because there were very few women when I first came up, in the 80s in politics. There were very few women that were actually doing the things I was doing. So I was in those back rooms with cigar smoking men and they were my mentors. And, and it was I'd see Tip O'Neill come into the White House, after, talking about Ronald Reagan and horrible policies and all these things. And the two of them are having a drink together and actually talking about things that were for the good of the country. And
Right.
it was, but that's how I grew up as an adult. And I had all these male mentors, and it wasn't until a little later that there were actually some women who I actually could look up to. And, other than my grandmothers, my mother, my great grandmothers,
Right. Right.
who are all very strong. I mean, in my mind, men and women, not different. It's competence or incompetence.
Right.
And if you're competent, do the job. Who cares?
That's right. That's right. And this culture, I mean, I'm so glad that we're coming out of that, but there's still some people
A
that
lot.
are old school. I know my father-in-law was like that, and but it's getting better out there, and vice versa with the men. I mean, I think that, moms would tell their sons, no, you can't wear that color pink, or you can't, you shouldn't be doing that, that's for girls, or whatever. A ballet, for instance, a lot of, oh, you don't want to do ballet, or their dads would say, you don't want to do ballet, that's not for a boy, that's not for a man. But we should not, gender, I mean, yes, that's a fine line with some things, but whatever it is that you're competent in. I mean, if you went to school for what you love to do, and you should be able to do it without criticism, and not just because you're a woman, and so that's a fine line right now out there in politics, with what men can do, what women can do, and all that stuff. But
I know
basically,
one of my daughters, when she graduated, she went into the Marine Corps.
wow.
And so we're talking, and there were men that were stronger than her. There were men that were weaker than her. And that's
Hmm.
the way it is. And
Yes.
I can remember when my kids were little, and you know how you get the Happy Meals or, at the different
Yeah.
fast food places. And they'd always say, "Do you want a boy toy or a girl toy?" Right? And I have three Happy Meals because I have the triplets. And I'd say, "What are the toys?" "Well, a boy toy." And I'm like, "No, what are the toys?" So,
Right.
and here I am at the drive-through, and I'd asked to talk to the manager, and I did this every single time
Yeah.
because I wanted them to write to corporate because it's like, no, if my daughter wants to play with a truck, she's damn well going to play with a truck. And if my
Right.
son wants a Barbie, I could care less.
Yeah,
And
right.
you know what? I think that's healthy. And so, and notice now they don't say boy toy or girl toy, but
No.
every single time. In fact, it got to the point where they'd say, "Michelle's here."
Yeah, I do. I remember, boy, do I remember, and I would buy the toys. I mean, there were times where I wanted all of the whole series or whatever it was, like let's say Toy Story, and I just wanted all of them, but I didn't, it wasn't time to eat dinner. So we'll just go to the drive-through and say, how much will it be for this toy? Oh, it'll $1.50 or $2.50. My kids played with all kinds of things. My daughter played with, my son's trucks, and my son played, make believe, dress up and with the dolls, and she had boy dolls and girl dolls and doggies and all kinds of stuff. So yeah, I don't see what the big deal is. I really don't. I mean, as they're growing up, they're exploring. And so I don't, I hate that culture does this. I really do. But yeah, I can relate to those days of driving, driving through the drive-through at McDonald's and for the toys. I mean, I made sure I was a huge collector of those Happy Meal toys. And now today, where are they? They're gone. Sold at garage sales. But anyway, I wanted to say to our listeners today that if you want to follow Michelle and her journey and hear about her new releases, you can follow her on Facebook and Instagram at Michelle S. Morris Author, like we told everybody at the beginning. There you will be able to keep in touch with her and see what her new releases are. I'm excited. I'm hoping that you get that. Well, first, I want to get the number one book, and then hoping that you're going to get that number two book published. So I want to thank you so much for being my guest today, Michelle. It was such a pleasure to talk with you. You are so talented, so gifted, so enthusiastic and influential. I'm so happy to have heard your story today. And for our listeners out there, if you like Michelle's story, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel so we can reach women who need encouragement and motivation like this to do their different. And if you're interested in being a guest on my podcast, you can reach me at my email in the description below. And I will also, like I said, I'm going to put Michelle's links there as well, or actually, they're just Facebook and Instagram. And so I already gave you the name for that. And so thank you again, Michelle. I so appreciate it. It was such a pleasure. And until next time, keep doing different. Bye bye.